I'm here today to show you about the Racor blending system to use with waste oil and diesel fuel blending. What I'm going to do today is talk a little bit about why you need to blend. Every diesel engine generates waste diesel oil, and that becomes a kind of a nuisance. And what we want to do is propose to you a way to get rid of that waste oil. What we do is you take the waste oil, clean it, filter it, and blend it with your diesel fuel. What you end up with is a 5% blend of waste oil to diesel fuel. It's a convenient way to get rid of your waste oil, and more importantly, you turn waste oil into free diesel fuel. Now on this unit here, I'm going to show you how we do it and what some of these basic components are on here. It looks sophisticated, but it really isn't. I want to break it down into some simple parts so that you can use this system at your own facility. Of course, the unit's on wheels. You can run it around the yard, take it back in at the end of the day. Got your power cord. We've got plenty of hoses here, which I'll go into in a minute. But I wanted to just let you know that it's not as sophisticated as it looks. It basically breaks down to a waste oil reservoir and a fuel filter and some sort of controls. You got a trailer hitch on the unit too. It's right here. Got a safety chain. You can haul around the yard. Make sure you don't exceed 5 miles an hour. These wheels aren't made for that. Foot brake locks the unit from rolling around the yard. When you're not using this trailer hitch, just put it back up like that. I want to point out some of the features on this unit. Basically, you got the heart of the system, which is the Racor fuel filter water separator. This unit is designed to remove all the water, rust, slime, dirt, what have you, and also to take it down to the particulates are removed. And also over here, we got our waste oil reservoir. You can actually take your waste oil and dump it right in this unit. It's got a lid. This is the control box, stop and start for the motors. We got your main pump and motor here. We got an auxiliary pump for putting waste oil into this reservoir. This red unit here is an oil meter. It's got a counter in front that actually tells you how many gallons of waste oil you've blended. Vacuum switch. And what it does is when the elements get dirty, it automatically shuts off the unit. Of course, after you do your maintenance, you got to reset it. There's a reset button on top. But that's just simply there that once these elements get dirty, it'll automatically shut itself off to itself. On the front, we got a gauge box here. This is the light alarm for the water sensor probe. Down here is a probe. When this fills up with water, it'll turn on this red light. This green light will always be on, showing you that the unit is working. When it hits that level, what you got to do is shut the unit off. It'll be buzzing too, making a noise. When you shut the unit off, come out, open this vent, because this is a vacuum unit, it's a vacuum lock. Open the vent, reach down here and get a bucket or something, open the valve, and drain the water out. Be careful not to stay in front of it, of course, because it'll squirt out pretty good. Then when you start seeing fuel come out, just shut it off. Make sure you close this. Then hit your button again, you're ready to go. This here is a vacuum gauge. It tells you what state the elements are. It's reading the restriction across the elements. When you start up, it should be about 0 to 3 inches of restriction. When it gets into the red, this switch will automatically shut it off. But if you're in a situation where you see it starting to get near the switch, it's just as well to go ahead and change your elements out. Now to change the elements, it's very simple. Again, shut it off, Make sure you open the vent, drain off about a gallon, take the lid off, remove the pin, take the clamp off, lid off, pull out your wrench, which is in your back pocket already. On top there's some bolts. Remove these bolts to get to the elements. And you want to make sure you buy and use the genuine Racor elements, because we have the exclusive Aqua Block media, which has a resin in it that repels water. Ours are designed so that water builds up on the paper media itself and then falls back down into the collection chamber. The elements are equipped with easy pull-out bales. Which you simply twist and pull up. And you've got an element here. These will normally be a little bit dirtier than this, of course. So you pull all three elements out. Make sure you throw them away in a good spot. And of course you reach over and get your new elements. Simply put them back on these center tubes. Make sure you put them down far enough so they seal. And then you put the bolts back on. Put your bolts back on. Don't tighten them down too hard. Now to put the lid back on, you'll notice that there's some arrows here. And there's a decal also on the filter housing. Put it back on so the arrows line up. Make sure it seats good. Take the clamp, put it back around. Make sure it's all on there even. Put the clamp back on. There's a pin. Stick it back through as a safety so the clamp doesn't get knocked off. And make sure your vent's closed. Of course, that valve should be closed already on the bottom. Now you're ready to go. Now the level should be down about this point, and you won't have to normally reprime it. If you do, and when you first get the unit, you want to use your wrench and take off this top port and get your funnel or whatever, or even the dispenser, and just fill the unit up. That way when you start the unit, you've already got the prime. It's already primed. What I do now is prime the unit. Take this bung off the top. Get a funnel or one of these jobs. Using diesel fuel, not oil, diesel fuel. Try to fill it up as high as you can. Okay, I dumped in a couple of those things full. Now I'm just going to put it back on. Even if there's a little bit of air, even up as much as this much, it's going to self-prime itself. The easiest way to do this is to run your buggy next to your fuel island and use the dispenser. Fill it right up. Make sure this is closed. When it's going across like this, it's closed. Same thing with that valve. When it's going across, it's closed. Okay, now I'm going to go back to the control box. Put it on. Keep my oil. Remember, this is for the oil. That's filling up. Now I'm going to hit the start pump to get this thing running. Make sure this valve is open. So what we're doing now is we're sucking fuel out of this tank here. And it's going through the unit and going back to the tank. And an easy way to check. we're going to talk about the oil reservoir. This is that big tank. It's where you dump your waste oil in. You got some hooks on each side for wrapping your hoses around. You got a nameplate here on top, which has got some vital information about some safety features and whatnot. Make sure you read that. This fitting here and this hose is an overflow line, which goes back to your waste oil reservoir in case you overfill the unit. This one here, this is where the oil comes in when you use the auxiliary waste oil pump and motor. You got a clamp here that keeps the unit closed. You can lock that to keep people from dumping in waste oil that you don't want to blend. Opens up as simple as this. You got a seal on top here that keeps rain and other kind of wind-blown moisture from getting in. You got a screen on top here, so when you dump oil in, you don't get bolts and rags and other kind of cigarette butts in here. It removes like that. This here has got a screen on it, which also keeps stuff from getting put in. Of course, to clean this, simply just turn it inside out, rinse it out, whatever. We got some stuff inside here that we're going to show you now. Where the oil goes, this is where your oil will fill up. That down there with that looks like an element screen. That's a suction filter so that you don't suck in any bolts that might drop in here and whatnot into the pump system. This float valve is set so that once this unit drains down, it'll shut off the oil injection into the filter. That means you won't pump the unit dry. Just put your unit back in. Make sure you get the screen back in. Close the lid. Auxiliary pump and motor. Notice it's not fixed on the unit. You can take it off. You can disconnect it if you wanted to use it for something else, such as transferring waste oil from your shop out to a barrel or some other system where you want to transfer some fluids. Just an extra feature. But in this case, what we want to do with this unit, you notice it's got a suction hose here. It's got a strainer on the end, so you don't suck up anything that you don't want in there. The pump itself is a gear pump. It's pretty tough. Shouldn't have any problem with it. The cord for power you take this and plug it into the control box underneath. There's a power outlet under the control box. We'll show that later as we get into operation. Now I'm going to show you how to use the auxiliary pump for getting your waste oil into this reservoir. So you got a line here I talked about before. Simply uncoil it, stick it down here. This is your waste oil reservoir out on the fuel island. Stick it down in there. Remember I talked about the overflow line? Just take it. This is the one with the big elbow on it. Take it and stick it down the same tank. Now this, of course, is the oil tank. Take your cord from your pump. Underneath the control box, you got a plug in. Now you got power to the motor. Pump and motor. You want to remove it, use it for something else. Just disconnect the quick disconnect. Make sure it's unplugged. There's a couple of handles on it. Reach down, remove it. And you can use this as a pump, auxiliary pump and motor for whatever you want to do. Red unit here is an oil meter. It's got a counter in front that actually tells you how many gallons of waste oil you've blended. It's coming in this line. Got fuel coming in, got oil coming in. You can check it. Look at this meter here. See the counter? Right now, we put in 7 gallons of oil. You got your electrical supply cord. It's just wound up on here. We'll take this off and get ready to show you how the unit actually works. Okay, I put the motor, the auxiliary motor back on. We're going to do some operation now. Plug this baby in. Take your cord from your pump underneath the control box. You got a plug in. Now you got power to the motor. And that's on this one. So you can go ahead and hit this start button and it'll start filling up this reservoir. Okay, now we're going to turn the unit on. The switch here on the unit turns on the power box, but the pumps aren't on yet. This light here just tells you that the power's onto the unit. I got my lines in my oil tank hooked up to the auxiliary pump and motor. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to hit the start button to turn that pump on to fill this reservoir up. You let this on. You can let this run for many hours to take the water out of your storage tank. But when you're done, you just hit your stop buttons, turn off your power. On the switch here also, if it ever overheats, it's got the breaker in here, and to reset it, you just turn it on and off. You start it back up again. Get yourself a fuse here. Always make sure you unplug this, the main supply, before you open the box. I want to show you some of the items that are on this unit. This right here is the fuel inlet quick disconnect. We got a hose that's wrapped around on the unit. Simply just hook it up to there. This valve should be open like that when you want to blend oil. If you don't want to blend oil, close it, because the oil is automatically going to be injected when the reservoir's got oil in it. On the other side of the unit, and this is the outlet for the blended fuel. It's a quick disconnect just like the other one, and you hook up the discharge line here. This is our fuel return line, and that goes, of course, on the outlet. Putting on the quick disconnect here. Now I'm taking off the fuel suction line. You notice it's got 2 plastic parts to it. Just so you get down to the bottom of the tank. You want to draw as near as you can off the bottom of this tank to get all the water out. This goes on the inlet side. Okay, now we got fuel in, and this is going to be our return line. And what's coming out of here will be the blended oil and fuel. Okay, now we're going to turn the unit on. The switch here on the unit turns on the power box, but the pumps aren't on yet. This light here just tells you that the power's onto the unit. I got my lines in my oil tank hooked up to the auxiliary pumping motor. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to hit the start button to turn that pump on to fill this reservoir up. So it's running right now. And of course, if you wanted to check, just look inside the unit again, which I'm doing now. And it's filling up. Put it on. Keep my oil. Remember, this is for the oil. That's filling up. Now I'm going to hit the start pump to get this thing running. Make sure this valve is open. So what we're doing now is we're sucking fuel out of this tank here, and it's going through the unit and going back to the tank. And the easy way to check, of course, is to pull the hose out. Okay, make sure it's running. Just lift your discharge hose out. Of course, you can see some fuel coming out. Okay, well, what we got going here is this thing's filled full of oil. It's automatically being pumped into the system, and fuel's coming in this line. Got fuel coming in, got oil coming in. You can check it. Look at this meter here. See the counter? Right now, we put in 7 gallons of oil. Okay, so we got it running now. I just want to go and do a little review on it. It's a mobile unit, waste oil reservoir, your fuel filter, control box. This light tells you when the thing's on. Pump and motor for the oil and the fuel. The oil meter. This valve has to be open when you're doing oil. Right now, if I'm saying, well, I've blended enough oil, I'm done, I can just shut that off. And what I'm doing now is I'm just sucking fuel out, cleaning it, and putting it right back in. So it's just recycling the fuel. Auxiliary pump and motor, power cord, trailer hitch, foot brake, fuel in, fuel out, water sensor gauge, vacuum switch. That's about it. Pretty simple. Piece of cake. Okay, now let's say that you're putting oil in, this pump's on, but you run out of oil here. I'm going to simulate that by pulling this hose out. You can hear the pump start to do this. Makes a different noise. And that's okay, because all that's going to happen is you just want to shut it off. You let this on. You can let this run for many hours to take the water out of your storage tank. But when you're done, you just hit your stop buttons, turn off your power. On the switch here also, if it ever overheats, it's got the breaker in here, and to reset it, you just turn it on and off. You start it back up again. Get yourself a fuse here. Always make sure you unplug this, the main supply, before you open the box. Okay, now you're done. You want to disconnect your lines, let them all drain back in. Get your quick disconnects. Try to keep these out of the dirt. And you're ready to wrap them back up. Put them on the hooks. Whoa. Notice on the end of this one pipe, you got quite a few holes on there. That way if this touches bottom, you still can pull off the top. It's connected. Over on this side here, nice easy storage. So you got your hoses out of the way. Pull this line out. It's always good to wipe these lines off. This one you can just put on the other side. Unplug your unit. Wrap this all up. Of course, go back to your power supply and disconnect your cord and wrap it back up. Take your foot brake off and roll it back in the shop. And what you've done now is taken your waste oil and turn it into free diesel fuel.